Dr. James Edwards is a devoted family physician whose tireless dedication has made him a cornerstone of his urban community. Day in and day out, he provides more than just medical care. He offers hope and support to those who walk through the doors of his bustling clinic. Despite the relentless pace and the emotional weight of his work, Dr. Edwards remains deeply committed to his calling, fueled by a passion to make a tangible difference in the lives of his patients. After a week marked by a series of intense challenges, from emergency cases that tested his skills to the heart-wrenching realities of patients struggling with long-term illnesses, Dr. Edwards felt the acute need for a brief escape. Seeking solace and a moment to rejuvenate, he decided to visit La Vue, a new upscale restaurant that had recently opened in the city. Known for its serene atmosphere and exquisite cuisine, La Vue promised a peaceful retreat from his demanding schedule. That evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, Dr. Edwards stepped into the quiet elegance of La Vue. The restaurant, with its soft, ambient lighting and tastefully understated decor, felt worlds away from the chaos of his clinic. Seated at a table with a view of the gently illuminated city, he looked forward to an evening of solitude and culinary delight, hoping to reset his mind and spirit after the week's trials. As Dr. Edwards savored the flavors of his meticulously prepared meal, his brief respite was abruptly interrupted. Two police officers approached his table, their expressions tense and their manner brusque. They explained that they were responding to a tip about a suspect seen in the area, claiming that Dr. Edwards matched the vague description provided. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories. Before we continue, I have a question for you. Why was Dr. Edwards specifically targeted by the police? Write your thoughts in the comment section. Let's continue our story to find out what happened next. Trying to keep the situation calm, Dr. Edwards politely attempted to verify his identity, explaining that he was a physician just enjoying his dinner after a long week. He reached for his wallet to show his identification, hoping to quickly clear up the misunderstanding. However, the officer seemed uninterested in his explanations or the ID he offered, insisting instead that he stand up and answer their questions. Their voices grew louder, attracting the attention of other diners who turned to watch the unfolding scene. The confrontation escalated as the officers, skeptical and seemingly convinced of his guilt, continued to question him in a manner that bordered on harassment. Dr. Edwards maintained his composure but couldn't hide his frustration and embarrassment. The restaurant's serene atmosphere was shattered by the disturbance, leaving Dr. Edwards feeling humiliated and powerless under the scrutinizing gaze of the restaurant's patrons. The situation not only disrupted his evening but also cast a shadow over his reputation in the very community he served. As the confrontation with the police officers intensified, the atmosphere in the upscale restaurant shifted dramatically. Other diners, previously engrossed in their own quiet conversations, now had their attention fixed on Dr. Edwards. The glow of smartphone screens lit up around the room as several patrons began recording the incident, anticipating the unfolding drama might hold broader significance. Amid the escalating tension and the unwanted spotlight, Dr. Edwards felt a profound sense of humiliation. He was painfully aware of every eye in the room on him, the murmurs of speculation, and the clicking of cameras. This public embarrassment was compounded by a deep-seated feeling of injustice. Here he was, a respected physician dedicated to serving his community, now being paraded as a suspect in front of his fellow citizens. The officer's dismissive and accusatory tone only deepened the sting, highlighting the racial profiling that he, despite all his accomplishments and contributions, could still not escape. The very fabric of his identity was being called into question, and the ideals of respect and equality he so fervently believed in seemed to unravel before his eyes. The situation underscored a harsh reality. No amount of personal success could shield him from the prejudices embedded within society. This painful realization, coupled with the public spectacle, left Dr. Edwards wrestling with feelings of vulnerability and a tarnished sense of dignity. As he stood there trying to uphold his composure, he couldn't help but wonder about the broader implications of this night, not just for himself, but for the countless others who faced similar indignities in silence. The tense situation reached a turning point when one of the police officers' radios crackled to life. A hurried conversation unfolded as a higher-up relayed critical information. The officer's expression shifted from one of authority to confusion, and then to visible embarrassment. Dr. Edwards watched, his own frustration mounting, as the officer turned to his colleague, whispering urgently. It was revealed in that whisper that Dr. Edwards was not only a respected physician, but also the brother of a high-ranking city official, well known for his roles in public service and civic leadership. The revelation that they had detained someone so closely connected to a key figure in the city's governance brought a swift change in the officers' demeanor. Realizing their grave mistake, the officers' approach changed instantly. They lowered their voices and their previously assertive stances softened. The one who had been most aggressive in his questioning now looked particularly uneasy, his face flushed with the dawning realization of the potential repercussions of their actions. Apologies began to tumble out, awkward and laden with the weight of their oversight. They tried to explain their actions as a misunderstanding stemming from the tip they had received, but the shift in their behavior spoke volumes about their embarrassment and newfound deference towards Dr. Edwards. This abrupt change only highlighted the disparity in treatment that depended so heavily on personal connections rather than fair treatment under the law. As the officers scrambled to rectify their error, Dr. Edwards stood amidst the ruins of what was supposed to be a peaceful evening, reflecting on the deep-seated issues that had led to this moment. Once the officers had awkwardly retreated, the atmosphere in La Vue remained charged with tension. The restaurant manager, keenly aware of the disruption and its impact on one of his guests, quickly approached Dr. Edwards with an expression of deep concern and embarrassment. He apologized profusely for the ordeal that had unfolded within the confines of his establishment, emphasizing that the restaurant prided itself on providing a dignified and respectful experience for all patrons. To make amends, the manager offered to calm Dr. Edwards' meal and extended an invitation for a private dining experience on a future date, hoping to somehow compensate for the evening's unfortunate events. His voice carried sincere regret, and he seemed genuinely distressed by the unnecessary humiliation inflicted upon one of his guests. Dr. Edwards, however, remained composed yet visibly upset. He acknowledged the manager's apologies with a nod, but his response underscored a deeper concern. "I appreciate your gesture," he began, his voice steady yet imbued with emotion, "but this isn't about a meal or monetary compensation. It's about the principle. It's about being seen and treated as a human being first, regardless of who my brother is or what position he holds. No one should have to endure such treatment." The doctor's words resonated around the now quiet dining room, his disappointment palpable. He continued, "This incident speaks volumes about the broader systemic issues that we still face as a society. It's about how quickly situations can escalate based solely on preconceptions and how vital it is for all of us to advocate for change." As he spoke, other diners nodded in agreement, some murmuring their support. The incident had shifted from a personal humiliation to a moment of collective reflection on the persistent challenges of racial bias and profiling. Dr. Edwards, though personally affected, used the moment to voice a broader message, hoping to ignite a spark of awareness and perhaps eventually lead to meaningful change. News of the incident at La Vue traveled fast, and it wasn't long before Dr. Edwards' brother, Thomas Edwards, a high-ranking city official, heard about what had happened. Shocked and infuriated, Thomas immediately took to the media to voice his support for his brother and to address the issue head-on. Holding a press conference the very next day, Thomas stood before a cluster of microphones, his demeanor serious but composed. "Last night, my brother, a dedicated physician who has served his community tirelessly, was subjected to unwarranted and unjust treatment while simply trying to enjoy a meal," he began, his voice firm. "This incident is a stark reminder of the daily realities faced by countless individuals in our community. It's not just about a misunderstanding or an isolated event. It's about systemic issues that require urgent attention and action." Thomas used his platform to call for increased accountability in the police force, stressing the importance of training officers to engage with all community members respectfully and without prejudice. He advocated for policies that would ensure such incidents were thoroughly investigated and that those found guilty of misconduct would face appropriate consequences. He also announced his intention to work with local law enforcement agencies to review and improve their procedures and interactions with the community, making sure that what happened to his brother would serve as a catalyst for positive change rather than just another headline. "Accountability, transparency, and continuous improvement in our police practices are non-negotiable," Thomas declared. "We owe it to our citizens to ensure that their rights are protected, that they are treated with dignity, and that their interactions with law enforcement are fair and free of racial bias." His statements made waves across the city, stirring public support and prompting a broader dialogue about police reform and racial justice. As the story gained momentum, community leaders, activists, and concerned citizens rallied behind the call for change. Inspired by the unwavering advocacy of one brother for another, the incident, while unfortunate, had sparked a movement towards greater justice and equity, signaling the beginning of what many hoped would be a transformative period for the community. The aftermath of Dr. Edwards' public humiliation at La Vue resonated deeply within the community, sparking a wave of solidarity and activism. Galvanized by the incident and Thomas Edwards' passionate advocacy, local groups and concerned citizens mobilized quickly. Within days, what started as a disturbing event transmuted into a rallying cry for justice and reform. Community organizers and activists arranged a series of protests and forums, creating spaces where residents could voice their frustrations and share their own experiences with racial profiling and police misconduct. Posters bearing Dr. Edwards' image alongside slogans like "Respect and Reform" and "Justice for All" became ubiquitous throughout the city, symbolizing the collective demand for change. These gatherings weren't just demonstrations of support for Dr. Edwards, but also platforms for broader discourse on systemic racial injustices within the police force. Speakers included other victims of similar incidents, social justice advocates, and experts on law enforcement reform. Together, they outlined specific changes needed in police training, oversight, and community engagement practices. Responding to the mounting public pressure, the local police department announced a comprehensive review of their operational procedures. The police chief publicly committed to improving officer training, focusing specifically on racial sensitivity, de-escalation techniques, and unbiased policing. He also pledged to establish a community oversight committee that would play an active role in reviewing cases of alleged misconduct and help build bridges between the police and the communities they serve. Moreover, the department scheduled a series of town hall meetings to facilitate open dialogue between officers and community members. These meetings were intended to rebuild trust and provide a transparent forum for discussing ongoing and future reforms. The community's response and the subsequent institutional promises marked a pivotal moment in the city's history. The incident involving Dr. Edwards had ignited a significant movement towards redefining community police relations, with hopes pinned on creating a more just and equitable system. As the efforts continued, the commitment from both the community and law enforcement to work together paved the way for potential lasting change, setting a hopeful course towards reconciliation and reform. Following the incident at La Vue, and amid the burgeoning public outcry and institutional promises for reform, Dr. Edwards embarked on a deeply personal journey to seek justice and healing. Still grappling with the emotional aftermath of the confrontation, he sought legal counsel to explore his options for holding the officers and the department accountable for the violation of his rights. Dr. Edwards met with a team of prominent civil rights attorneys who carefully reviewed the details of his case. They discussed potential legal pathways, focusing on civil actions that could address both the personal indignities he suffered and the broader issues of racial profiling and police misconduct. The legal team emphasized the importance of this case, not only in terms of personal redress, but also as a significant precedent for similar cases in the future.